Hi everyone, my name is Stephen Wakabayashi and you're listening to Yellow Glitter, Mindfulness Through the Eyes and Soul of Queer Asian Perspectives. This episode, we're joined by an extra special guest, Mike Curato. And Mike Curato is a gay first-generation, half Filipino-Irish American author and illustrator of books for youth. He has created many picture books for young children and has just released his debut queer young adult graphic novel, Flamer. Hi, Mike. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Really glad to have you. And I was able to take a look at your book, and I have so many thoughts and opinions and wanted your take on it. But first, before I started, I just want to ask, how is everything going with quarantine, with everything that's happening right now?
With the
Yeah.
world on
Yeah.
fire. Uh, just fine. No, every day is a practice in
Hmm.
patience and yeah, I'll just say patience for now. But um, good days, bad days, in between days. Um, it's just hard, right? Because it's just so multi-layered, everything that's happening
Yeah. Yeah.
um, with the pandemic and politically, and um, it's just a lot. So yeah, I'm just eating a lot of ice cream. That's what I'm doing.
Me too. What flavor?
What flavor am I not eating? Well, I think presently in my freezer I have mud pie, mission fig, ginger, vanilla. I think that's all that's left. There was more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I have been bulk purchasing. Trader Joe has this Thai tea mini mochi vegan ice cream.
Oh, I'm an old friend of the Trader Joe mochi. I know them well.
And so I just open up a box. I'm like, it's that type of night again. I just get a fork and just start going to town one by one by one.
Wow, a fork. So civilized.
Yeah. And yeah, I can totally feel you with just so much is happening around in the world. And my question to you is there anything that's helping you just get through it?
Right now, just being able to sit in a yard with my friends has been sustaining me. So I'm a little nervous about the winter on its way. I bought a heat lamp for my patio, so I'm hoping that will, I don't know, buy us a little more time that we can hang out outside, but we'll see
Yeah.
once the snow comes.
And do you recently move out of New York?
I left New York 4 years ago, and
Oh,
I'm in
yeah.
Western Massachusetts now. Yeah.
Yeah. And how is quarantine life over there in Western Mass?
Actually, I think compared to New York, it was a cakewalk, probably. There are a lot of places I can go outside. So it's probably a more ideal place to be right now.
Yeah, it is. It's doing much better than most of the United States,
Yeah.
right? I'm just curious, what do you miss most since COVID has happened?
Um, just getting a hug,
Oh,
getting a hug,
yeah.
going dancing. Like I
Yeah.
haven't, I mean, what even is that?
What is socializing?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
I just it's hard having the limited human interactions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it
it's
is.
hard.
Yeah, it's really tough. And it's just having to do everything at home, not just work, but exercise, keep ourselves entertained. It just has to be this all in one box. And it's
Yeah.
hopefully you have the space where you're able to nest and make it into something your own. But a lot of people here in New York City, they live in shoeboxes with
Yeah.
many roommates. And a lot of people have those horror stories where they live with roommates, right? Where they don't get along. And it's just a lot of empathy for a lot of people living in these intense conditions right now with COVID-19.
Yeah, I don't know what I would do. I mean, I live by myself, so
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, I mean, obviously that's a challenge too, but then
Yeah.
if you put that scenario in front of me, like, or you can live with all these people, I'd be like, I'll just feel lonely sometimes. That's okay.
Yeah. It's a big thing with the whole loneliness aspect with everyone having to put their dating on pause too, right? Where
Right.
they're trying to do these online dates on Tinder,
I
Grinder
just,
online dates.
yeah, I've been on two Zoom dates so far,
how
and
how
I'm
was it?
still trying to adjust to them,
Yeah.
like it's just hard to, it's just hard to say
Mm.
how it's going, um, when you're not right in front of somebody. But I mean, they seem cool.
It feels like there's like a business, right, where you have to like get dressed up and you're like, okay,
I
I'm
know,
gonna
it's like an interview. Yeah.
I'm gonna sit in front of my computer and we're gonna have a date. Did you do
Let
like
me,
anything? Like, I know some people they cook dinner and then they like try to facilitate the Zoom.
oh
Like,
God, no, I'm not gonna sit there while someone watches me like shovel food in my mouth. I
yeah.
mean, it's different when you're eating in person, but just I already feel on the spot. That's the weird thing, right? Because you're just constantly like looking right at each other. Whereas in person, you'd be like looking around the restaurant and I don't know, look at the menu
Going
or
to the bathroom.
yeah, 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 just taking a minute.
Yeah.
So yeah, new and exciting adventures in dating.
Well, yeah, more power to you. And, one day we will look back at all of this and we will laugh and we will say, oh, yeah, remember that? Remember that time when we did that? But we're just going to get through it together,
Yeah, keep
or,
on
or
keeping
try
on.
at least our best.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I've had a chance to take a look at your book and you released it pretty recently, right?
Yeah, September 1st.
September 1st, yeah. And it touches on so many things. From your take, what is your synopsis of the story? What is Flamer?
Oh, sure. So Flamer is the story of Aiden Navarro, who's a 14-year-old, half Filipino, half white mixed kid. It's the summer of 1995. He is about to start his first year of high school, but right now he's away at a scout camp where he's navigating friendships, bullying, how sometimes those two things can overlap. He's dealing with questions about his religion, dealing with body image issues, and dealing with racism day to day. And all that is the backdrop to Aiden confronting his sexual identity.
What was your inspiration to write it?
Well, when I was 14, which is the age of the protagonist in the book, Aiden, I didn't see myself. I didn't see myself in books. I didn't see myself on the screen. I was a chubby mixed kid, who was also really effeminate and really liked art. Like,
Hmm.
who was my role model? I'm not quite sure. Um,
Yeah.
so that's a confusing message growing up and just feeling like an outsider most of the time. And I wanted to write this book for
Hmm.
people who feel that way. I mean, specifically queer youth. I think queer youth are very underserved in literature. So I'm just trying to add to what I hope is a growing genre. Um, and, I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but there is suicide ideation in this book. And I would like this story to be a lifeline for people who are struggling right now, who maybe haven't found their community yet. And I hope it's something that can give them a little bit of hope to hold on to.
Just in the work that you've put out into the world, have you ever really touched anything this personal before?
No, this one goes pretty deep. You know, I'm very proud of the other books I've put out, and I think that there's a lot of emotion in those books. But this is very personal, and I feel way more exposed in this book than I do with my other work.
I just wanted to get to understand you and kind of your past and your history of just growing up, and what was your experience like navigating your queer identity, but also your biracial identity as well?
Yeah. Well, I grew up outside New York City. I'm first generation. My dad is from the Philippines. My mom is first generation Irish. And I was brought up Catholic. I went to Catholic school. And I'm trying to remember when my ethnic identity became an issue. Because, you know, I remember being really little and knowing, yeah, I'm half Filipino. And it was just kind of this extra thing that was like a fun fact about me. I remember in, I think it was 8th grade, we did a production of Peter Pan, and I was cast. First of all, I tried out for Smee, which I thought I would have been pretty funny. But anyway, I didn't get that. Instead, I got to be one of the Lost Boys. But the teachers thought it would be hilarious to cast me as one of the twins and have this other Filipino guy as the other twin.
Oh.
And I was maybe like a foot taller than him. And they're like, it's so funny. And like, we had no say. Like, we didn't think of this. We didn't think it was very funny. But we're like, okay. Also, our class had twins. Like, and they were Filipino. I was just like, why didn't you have that? Oh, but it's fine. I mean, I'm glad that the twins actually weren't cast as the twins, but sorry, I'm getting away from myself.
Typecasting.
I feel like the older I got, the more aware I became of my otherness.
Was there like a specific moment when it just kind of clicked for you, or when you've traveled somewhere? Just curious. Yeah.
I mean, I do remember traveling south as a kid, and being in a multiracial family certainly raised eyebrows wherever we went. And I started noticing some trends because, and you know, this is the 90s, but, you know, we would go to a restaurant, and even though, you know, like, segregation isn't legal anymore, I still noticed that the white people seemed to sit on one side of the restaurant and most of the black people sat on the other. And we were always seated with the black folks, which is totally fine. And I remember even the black folks looking at us like, whoa, what's going on there? I just feel like whenever I left the New York area, I started to feel more and more aware of people. I mean, and some people would just blatantly be like, what are you? Not that that doesn't happen in New York also. I think that may be the clincher. The thing that really brought it to my attention was this immediate need to know whenever someone would meet me, because they can't immediately label me. They're like, well, what are you? You know, they're like, I don't know what to do with this person because I can't immediately, you know, and before I could even answer, people would start guessing.
Yes.
Like the guessing game. And I don't know what's worse. I don't know what's worse when people are like, are you Japanese? And I'm like, no, I don't look Japanese at all. Or the people that are like, you're Filipino, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, I knew it. And it's like, you want a prize? Like, you want to make you some adobo now?
Yeah.
So it really bothers me. It still bothers me. And now, I don't know.
And it's
now
like the fact that they have to know, right? It's like, do you need to know? Like, why in this context is why I always ask, right? Like, okay, we're eating food together. We're doing this. We're in a classroom. Like, does my race matter?
Yeah, that's my new approach. When someone asks me that, I reply with, "Why do you ask?" And then I see some people kind of be like, "I," and then people are like, "Oh, I'm just curious." And
Yeah, yeah,
then I'm just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Oh, that's nice." um, so,
Mm-hmm.
still trying to navigate some things,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but I think I've reached a place where I'm very happy with who I am. I think there were times that there was a lot of shame surrounding my otherness, all the aspects of my otherness, right? Where it's just like, oh my God, I have too many other things. Like, this is too much. You're not straight acting. You're not fully white. You're not fully Asian. You're not this and you're not that. But I've come to realize that what I am is very unique. And I think uniqueness can be a good thing. So that's where I am now.
Yeah, what's helped you find that path towards being and embracing yourself?
I think finding community has been a big part of that. A huge part of my own self acceptance happened not just when I came out finally, senior year of college, but I moved to Seattle after I graduated and really made my first uh, very close gay friends. And they weren't just gay, but they were also Asian. They were Gaysian. And it was like huge for me to have people who knew how I felt. And one of those friends was half white, half Chinese. So that meant a lot to me to be able to talk about our experience together and just not even have to explain anything to him. And we're still very, very close friends.
Well, as a writer, are there any authors that have really spoken to you, especially as it comes to queer literature? Queer Asian literature is up and coming.
It is up and coming, and there are suddenly a lot of us, and it's very exciting. I've been on some panels with some awesome folks like Kiku Hughes, who wrote and illustrated Displacement, and Trung Nguyen, who wrote and illustrated The Magic Fish. I just love that all of a sudden there are just a bunch of us coming out of the woodwork, and I'm here for it. There's something about it being comics that has like the queer and the Asian, like it's like the perfect storm. But other authors, queer authors that have really inspired me. I mean, Alison Bechdel, when I read Fun Home, I was like, whoa, I was blown away. And then I started reading Dykes to Watch Out For. That was the strip. And then the book is the essential. Dykes to Watch Out For. Yeah. That was a huge book for me.
Why? Why so?
Because she goes in so deep and it's very personal and it's very honest. And I love an honest story. I think that carries way more weight. I'm not necessarily saying it has to be nonfiction to be honest, but there has to be some essential truth woven into it, that right away you understand that experience and you connect with that writer's humanity or the character's humanity. So that's certainly something that I strive for. I'm trying to think of other queer authors. This always happens, like every single time someone asks me, like, who are authors that have influenced you? It's like, I don't
Going
know.
through a Rolodex in your head, you're
Yeah,
like,
no, there's some kind of term for this where it's like
yeah.
I just go blank, like I've never read a book before.
You've never read a book.
I've never read a
Secret
book.
is out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's twist. Um, I just arrived at this
Yeah.
completely independently.
You've never opened the book. Have you? Question. I actually recently read Ocean Vuong.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I read his book
So
last
good.
year. It was just the poetry, the artistry of the words, which is so absolutely gorgeous. And I think it was a great, it captured really beautifully too, kind of the struggles of being American with a immigrant parent, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I listened to that on audiobook, actually, which made it so much more for me. Um, Hearing it in Ocean's voice.
Oh,
Um,
Ocean was a narrator.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I have to check that out.
I
Yeah.
love when authors read their
Yeah.
own work. So I really appreciated, especially because it was poetry, being able to hear how he wanted to say it. Um, so, and I actually was in Maine for listening to most of that book, and I just have these memories now of like literally climbing on rocks with the ocean crashing. Like I'm like I'm by the ocean. I'm listening to ocean.
Yeah.
It's all ocean all the time. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it just it was this really sensory experience.
Wow, yeah, I have to definitely check that recommendation out. You can't really tell immediately it's poetry because it's just written long form, like a
Mm,
typical book, right? But you can definitely tell the prose is in there. You just have to pick up on it, and it's just very vulnerable, and just talking
yeah,
about a lot of those intimate moments when we doubted ourselves, we doubted our family members, and I totally agree. It adds that human aspect that people are just hungry for. And I think, we could see all the most beautiful, perfect things all day long, but that's Instagram, right?
yeah. But I think it's so important to see the messiness of life, and there's something beautiful about that, you know. And when things are too manicured, it it just feels like such a lie, you know. So I really appreciate when people share messy things when they're
Yeah.
true.
And that's what brings us together, right? It's the messiness that ties us all
Mm-hmm.
together and not the perfections, because those are actually, for many, rarely experienced, right? These like once in a lifetime successes or luck of the draw. And it's the everyday stuff that we go through, the fights we have with people over the most petty and stupid things, or the times when we just cried, but just like really cried about something, which just brings us together, not just from a mental capacity, but I think that's when our souls are able to connect at that deeper level.
I also think there's something about the Asian first gen experience that is about perfection, right? About trying to maintain um, this veneer because you're representing your family, you're representing your heritage, you're representing all these things except yourself sometimes. And that can really get wary. And I definitely played that game, you know.
Was that like throughout college, after college?
I think, I mean, definitely when I was in school, I was very much um, trying to be, you know, an A student all the time. I really wanted to be seen as a good person. You know, both my parents were Catholic. Um, Catholicism certainly did a number on me with
Yeah.
being good all the time.
Hmm.
You know, if you're bad, you're going to hell, you know. There's very little margin for error in that kind of atmosphere, and I was so wound up, you know, so high strung. And then, you know, things started to snap later on. Um, and I was very depressed for a really long time.
Yeah. In what way? Was
Um,
it like relationships? Was it?
I mean, I didn't really have many romantic relationships until I was older. I mean, I didn't even kiss another guy until I was like 23 or 24. Um, it was a long road. No, I would say that just trying to be everything for everyone else and not being true to myself when I was younger put a lot of stress on my mental health. And then I think I just started kind of slipping in my outward goodness, I guess, where it's like I became short-tempered and I started sleeping a lot and which is I was just really irritable and now looking back I understand like wow I was so angry because I couldn't be myself because if I was myself I was scared I was going to be cast
Mhm.
away.
And it's anger with the situation rather than at something.
Right. And I'm sure I was like angry at myself for being different. It's like, oh my God, there's nothing I can do to just be like, I'm just never going to be a straight white bro. Like, there's nothing I can do. It doesn't matter how good my grades are. It doesn't matter. I also used to be really chubby, right? And so I worked really hard to try to get in shape. And it's an interesting concept too, because I think self actualization and self acceptance is an evolution, right? It's not like you have this one experience and you're like, I'm good now,
We feel like it is, and then the next thing
right?
happens,
And
and we're
then
like, oh,
surprise. So
yeah.
my coming out experience, like when I moved to Seattle, I thought like, okay, I finally came out and like now everything's gonna be great. And it was like, oh, just kidding.
Here's the
Because now,
beginning.
yeah, it's the beginning, honey. Buckle up because now that you finally got rid of,
Yeah.
the like homophobe crowd that you were whatever exposed to, now you have to deal with your gay family and we're so awful to each other. you know like I've experienced so much love in the gay community and I've also experienced so much hate.
Yes.
um,
Yes.
and we are our own worst enemy in so many ways, and I actually experienced racism on a whole new level that I didn't experience before I was out.
Outward racism towards a queer Asian man, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blatant. I would
Hmm.
see it. I mean, this is dating me, but on the dating websites, like this was
Yeah.
before the apps existed in the before
Which one?
times.
Adam for Adam?
Oh, I was on manhunt dot
Yeah.
net. I was on gay.com, the G.C. I
Yeah.
was on, like Match and OkCupid, but just blatantly in people's profiles. And you still see it today on Grindr and Scruff or wherever. I think they're trying to police that now, which, but well, I'll get to that in a second. But, it was so hurtful to just see like not just only into white guys, but sometimes just blatantly like not into Asians, not into black, not into whatever. And it's just
No
like,
fat femmes Asians, right? That's like
yeah,
the
it's
saying. Yeah.
incredible. So self-entitled too. They think like, well, I came out and so that's my struggle and I'm a gay man, so I can say whatever I want. And it's like, wow. um, and I got into fights like on those dating sites with people. Like I started messaging people to give them a piece of my mind and they didn't want to hear it. I don't know if I would have gone about it differently now, but I got to a breaking point where it's like, oh my God, I'm tired of reading this every day. Like I'm never going to meet
Hmm.
anybody.
And the people who think that they're not racist, right? The rice queens, it's racism at a different level where it's,
Right.
fetishization. They'll
Yeah.
message you all about you being Asian,
Right.
and like, oh yeah, Asian, I love Asians, and they'll say this to you too.
Oh, I
Or
know.
it's, yeah,
If only I kept a record of every single
yeah.
like Rice Queen solicitation that I've received. Um, and I'm also gonna call out like just other Asian guys that I'd be into, and like they're only into white guys, and it's like, oh my God. And it's like I am half white actually to
There's a
another Asian
lot of
person.
just inter Gasian squabbles,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's very vicious, and it's a lot to do with internalized racism, internalized
Hmm.
homophobia. There's so many internalized aspects to it, but it. How do you even tell someone that, right? Like, you are internalizing racism,
Mm.
and to them, they're like, oh, it's just my preference, you know? And especially for queer Asian people, right? You're already getting shat on like by multiple different degrees, and it's a big point of discussion in my work that I do, but also in the support groups that I hold, where we talk about this and how for queer Asian men, it's very difficult to just make another queer Asian male friend just out of the blue. And it's just a lot of experiences in the past where even like in the dating apps, like you said, they face the racism from other brothers that they thought were going to be friends with them. And so, yeah, it's what do we even do with that?
I wish I could give you an answer.
And it's definitely a work in progress too, right?
Hmm.
We've all been there too, where we've internalized our racism, we've internalized our homophobia, but well, at least for myself, speaking for myself, is I'm just so grateful for the community that I had that really pushed me to think outside of that box. I
Mm.
had a community that pushed me to think outside of my preference is my preference versus it's really shaped by everything that we see, we watch, we consume. And when I approach these situations now, I have a little bit more tenderness and a little bit more compassion, understanding that they too are going through a lot of the similar things. Because let's face it, right? White supremacy is vast. It's everywhere,
Mm.
Marginalization towards Asians is everywhere. Marginalizations towards queer Asians are everywhere. And people are just struggling to try to find how they can resolve it, you know? And we're all human. We're all human in the aspect that we're trying so hard to solve issues we see in the world that sometimes we go about it in ways that might not be conducive to our community. It's a very tender discussion because I also work with a lot of people in the activism space who just have, zero tolerance towards it, and they shut it down immediately, and they don't want to have any discussion with it. And
Mm.
that also polarizes, right? A lot of the people who are floating in that space in the middle where they don't even have words to describe their internalized racism, you know, and they immediately are turned off by these activists, and they go, "What's good? That what didn't like you anyway," and they're looking for ways to validate it. And so it's the pains from both sides continuously to hurt each other. And over the past few years, the biggest revelation that I have had is it just has to all come from love. At the end, we're all struggling. We're all struggling in different degrees. And for us to try to quantify somebody else's struggles through our experiences, we're just doing the same thing that we wish weren't put upon us.
I think that's where the power of story can really make a difference, right? If we all were able to share our story, our experiences, then there's more room for discourse and more room for understanding and compassion and empathy. I'm hoping more people do, you know?
Share their stories, not not just your pictures on Instagram, but share your story, you
No,
know.
yeah, get real. Yeah.
And yeah, just going back to your book and the parts where you just touched on really dark areas of just contemplations of suicide, contemplation on self-harm. Where does it come from?
Well, I talk about this in the afterword of the book, but when I was 14, I did experience suicide ideation. I was scared to death of going to high school. I had left Catholic school, which was not the happiest experience. And all that I knew about public school was that it was a lot rougher than what I was used to. You know, I'd heard stories from people about things that happened there, and I was just so terrified. And I knew that I was low hanging fruit. No pun intended. I just knew I was a sitting duck, basically. And I think I didn't even really understand that I was gay then. I knew that people thought I was gay, and I knew that I was effeminate. Um, I just didn't understand what I wanted. I just didn't know. And I was just more concerned about my own, I don't know, safety and well-being. I just felt like, is this what every day is going to be like? But it's going to be worse than this, you know, because it's like I'm already bullied for being who I am and not even acting on anything, just walking and talking. That's what I get harassed for. Um, and it just seemed like everything I did was wrong. Anything I uh, thought was funny or anything that I thought was cool was like gay, 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 gay. And I was so tired, you know, because you know, and then the church is telling me that being gay is something evil and it's against God's plan. And the only gay people I had to look to were, you know, men dying of AIDS on the news. And I was like, is this going to be my life? Like, um, where people threaten me and maybe I'll die of a disease and then I'll go to hell. Like, not great prospects, right? Um, so part of me was tired. Another part of me was just scared that if I didn't do it myself, someone else would do it for me. Um,
Yeah.
I just didn't I just didn't know what to do. And I think that's really common for a teenager because they haven't experienced the world outside of whatever bubble they've grown up in. And I know there are exceptions, of course, but I feel like there are still tons of places in this country and in this world where it still feels like 1995 and there's no compassion for difference. So that's what the story is built around was that moment where I had to make that choice. That's the honest moment that I wanted to lead with. And then I had just kind of unpacked all of these other memories and feelings and experiences and figured out how to weave those into the story. But that was very much, I knew that would be the climax of the story. Sorry for the spoiler, but
But it's so well done, and you illustrated it yourself too, and your illustration gets more and more intense as you're going on this roller coaster towards the suicidal ideation, where you're surrounded at one point by flames all around. Everything is engulfing you, and is that what you had pictured?
Yeah, I just remember sleepless nights, like laying in bed and um, going over and over and over and over things people had said to me, things that I was scared people would do to me. So, yeah, the spread that you're referring to, Aiden is lying in bed and he's just very small on the page, and the whole spread is just red and lots of scribbles of all these random thoughts going through his head, um, surrounding his identity and how at odds it is with the world, it seems. Um, yeah, and I really wanted the art in this book to be kind of rough. It's kind of a departure from my usual work.
Which I had a chance to take a look. It was very cute, very bubbly, and this one was definitely very sketchy, but it felt very real. It felt very authentic.
Yeah, like I wanted it to be more raw to reflect the story. So it was a long process to develop
Hmm.
the style, but I'm really happy with how it came out.
Hmm. Hmm. Is the final format in which way it came out with the illustrations, the story, is this how you had expected it to be when you first thought about it?
I knew that it would be in black and white with spots of color. Like I knew um, the bleakness of the story made sense for it to be in black and white. But then um, there's this visual thread of fire throughout the book. I
Hmm.
mean, it's called Flamer. So it's very much a visual
Yeah.
metaphor that gets used throughout. And I really wanted the fire to have that colorful, that powerful burst of energy. So any instances of fire is in full color, as well as certain inanimate objects that I want to draw the viewer's attention to, or sometimes the atmosphere of the page is tinted in reds and oranges. And it's all used to convey emotion throughout the book. And, it ranges from anger to love to fear. So just these really intense moments get highlighted by the sudden bursts of color.
Yeah. Yeah, which is beautiful, and I highly recommend everyone to go check it out. And just kind of wrapping the arc with the just the dark period in the story where the fire comes out, right? This burst of flame, and when it extinguished in the book, just in your personal life, where was that turning point for you where you realized suicide wasn't the way, or that you were able to get through it? Because to be honest, this is the reality of a lot of people
Mm.
who don't even realize it. A lot of kids, young adults, especially in these enclosed communities where they're like the black sheep.
Yeah, I mean, queer youth are at a much higher risk of suicide, self harm, homelessness than their straight peers. If that queer youth is a person of color and or trans, the risks increase exponentially. Um, so, I mean, for me, I did have this moment when I was 14 and I was at a scout camp, um, where I was so tired and I just wanted everything to stop. Like I just wanted to stop. And I mean, really, what stopped me was just thinking about my family and my best friend, who the book is dedicated to.
That's
Um,
beautiful.
so the book is dedicated to my friend Laura,
Hmm.
and there's a character in the book named Violet, and um, she is inspired by Laura, who was my pen pal when I was really young. Um, and sometimes you just need one really good friend, and she was that friend that I could be totally honest with. And, and she could be honest with me, and we had each other. And I couldn't deal with thinking about what killing myself would do to her, and would do to my family. That was too much. And so I decided not to. And whenever it would kind of pop up for me, like the idea of it, I would just kind of acknowledge it and be like, yeah, but I can't do that. It's just like, okay, so I've already established like not doing this. So what else can I do? And I think things became a little bit easier. I mean, just to give you some background, I went to high school. Freshman year was awful, as I knew it would be. And sophomore year was a little less awful. And junior year was a little less awful. And senior year was bearable. And I did make more friends. And I still wasn't out. And then, and also, I have to say, like, scouting really did a lot for me. As complicated an organization as it was, as it is, I made real friends in that program, and it gave me a lot of confidence in myself. We did a lot of different activities that I was able to kind of prove something to myself that it's like, I can do this. I'm a very capable person. And and I was even able to impress maybe some of my skeptics when I started out. I think some people thought I may not last long, but then I did. Um, so scouting gave me a lot of confidence, and then going away to college was transformational. Going to art school, being around, yeah, finding community. Again, there's another thing, like, oh my God, I'm around all these artists. This is so cool. Like, and most of those people had similar experiences in high school, not necessarily because they were gay, because they were the weirdo, right? They were like the person who sat in the art room during lunch and, listened to grunge music. And so I really connected with my art folks, and they had my back when I finally did come out. They were the first people I came out to, and they were all there for me, even though none of them were queer. So it's been like this, um, how should I describe it? The longer I hang out, right, the longer I remain, the more opportunity I create for myself to find happiness, to find acceptance, to accept myself. So that has taken me far away from that scary place of thinking, this is it. This is all I have to work with, and I hate it, and I hate myself, and I want to go away. I want this to be done. But now I feel more like I've learned, like, okay, maybe I don't like what's happening with my life today. It doesn't mean it has to be this way tomorrow necessarily. So I've learned to enjoy the ride, as bumpy as it may be. So that's what I would say is, I just want to encourage people to just hang out for a little bit and see what else is possible.
Yeah, there are people who are going to love you. And out of a world of 7.7 billion people, right? Grade school is what, 100 of them? 200?
Right? Grade school sucks.
I hated it. I absolutely hated it too. I was like picked on all the time. I ate my lunch behind the library, where there's like a little area that was just completely shaded. It was like isolated from everywhere, because I just didn't feel safe.
I did the same thing.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, there is a stairwell. Between the cafeteria and the library, and I would go eat lunch in there in like seventh and eighth grade, when I was like, I can't deal with try and find a seat today. I'm
It's
going
not the
into the
cool area near
shadows.
the library. It's like all the other areas are like the cool area, and just like the weirdo is just like, okay, this is safe for us, and we're just like, okay,
Right.
let's do attendance here. Let's make sure all of us are accounted for. It was really tough, and I also resonate with just going through grade school. I also try to commit suicide too. But my friends actually turned me into the school counselor, the school therapist,
Mm,
which I was very angry at the time, but
mm,
I appreciated it because in the it took me a little bit to come to, but I really understood that they were looking out for my better interest, my future, and so while it was very hard for them at the time, they're one of my dearest friends that I absolutely love. And my question is, yeah, did your friend, did your family ever really know what you were going through at the time?
I don't think people did. No, I don't think people really understood that it was that dark. Um, when I was 14, anyway. Um, when I was in college, I was still battling depression, but I didn't seek counseling also until a friend intervened and was like, you're obviously at a point where you need help. And I also was very mad about it. Nobody wants to be told that they need help, or, you know, of course, I was like that classic, like instant snappy biatch that was like, oh, so I'm crazy. You think I'm crazy? She's like, no, I think you are sleeping all day and not eating a lot and you're not yourself and something's up, and she was totally right. And when I did start therapy, that was a turning point for me, because that therapist also was the first person I ever admitted to that I even felt like I might be gay. Even just saying that. And I remember like being hysterical and saying that, and then just saying like, but I can't even talk about that. And she was like, okay. And we had a lot of other things to talk about. And then eventually, maybe after a year, I was like, I think I'm ready to start talking about this now. And yeah, that made a huge difference.
Mm. It's a tough conversation to have with somebody and telling them that
Yeah.
therapy is good. And I'm just
Yeah.
wondering what made you seek it out? Because I think this is a story I hear very often with a lot of my friends, a lot of people I work with too, where they want to help someone. They see something is not right, something is up, and even if they recommend counseling, the people just brush it off because there's a stigma attached to it,
Right.
right? Where if you have therapy, it's because something is wrong with you. Well, all of us go through life in a lot of trauma. So,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. But I'm just curious, what resonated with you most for you to actually go and book your first appointment?
Well, first of all, I'm really grateful that the school I went to had free counseling for those who needed it to be private. Because I was always so scared of like, oh, everyone's going to know then. Um, I didn't want my family to know. I didn't want my friends to know. But there was private counseling that I qualified for, and um, so that was one hurdle, right? Where it's like, okay, I know, okay, this one friend knows who helped get me there. But other than that, it's confidential. So that was huge. And then I started to understand that it was a safe space, that the therapist was just a third party and wasn't going to judge me. And that's a very different experience for me because, I would see the therapist as an authority figure, right? And being brought up Catholic, and son of an immigrant, it's just like you do what
Yeah.
you're told to do.
Very
You
much the
don't
Asian experience.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do not question
Yeah.
anybody. You don't do this, you don't do that. And with the church, it's just like careful what you say, careful what you do. And this was a place where I could say anything I wanted. There were no repercussions. And it was the first time I felt free to actually speak exactly what I was saying. Um, and that's so liberating, and so important for everyone to be able to do that. To never actually be able to discuss your full opinion. Maybe I would give my limited opinion, right? But I wasn't worried about critique. And she was just there to help. And she was very sympathetic and empathetic, um, and validated a lot of how I felt. So I love therapy.
I love it too. It's
Still in therapy, never stopping.
yeah.
Yeah. I
I'm
mean, what would the
so
world
I'm
be like
so
if we were all
glad.
in therapy?
What would it would be a different it would be such a different place. Donald Trump would not be a thing.
Oh, I can't even.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. But I think with wounds, what I always say is now the wounds have surfaced up, and it's up to us to figure out what we want to do with it. You know, and it's, all these people who have been racist right now, they didn't magically all of a sudden become racist. Maybe they had the
Right.
belief, right? They had
Yeah.
internalized racism, and they finally have a space to talk about it in the open. And it probably had no space to discuss in a healthy manner. And then now it's just it's therapy unhinged, right? Where it's just you do everything terrible that you want to do, and we'll let you. Whereas if we had opened up and talked about some of these things, I definitely don't think you're going to see it to the extent that it is today. And it just further, I think it further just expands upon the issues that we're just so disconnected from each other. We've stopped listening. We just ended up deleting everyone away from our lives who didn't agree with anything that we might have had conflicts with. And now we wonder, if we can even trust polls. But even our own personal poll and our friends list, we've completely segregated so that we only see what we like. And I think that's a very harrowing truth, that just because we don't see racism in front of us doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
It is a reckoning.
It is a
It
reckoning.
is. And it's oddly validating
Mm-hmm.
in a way. It's funny how, I have a lot of white friends who are just,
Mm-hmm.
shocked and horrified.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of like, yeah,
Welcome to my world.
um, this isn't new.
Yeah.
It's not new. And also it's not as cut and dry
Mm-hmm.
as people might like. People love to stereotype, and people who like to think of themselves as not being racist like to play up stereotypes as well. But it's like, you don't have to go to the deep south in a red state to find someone who's racist. Like, I live in a liberal town. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to go very far to encounter racism.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's also this misconception, right, that racists, like capital R racists, are these people, that are like Klan members, and like their whole day is filled with meetings about how to like burn crosses and stuff. And it's like, no, actually, um, it's just a part of our culture that we all have to deal with, right? And the people that benefit from it haven't done much to dismantle it because they're doing fine, and maybe that's not even something that they consciously recognized. But of course, like, you're not going to actively take part in dismantling a system that you don't even realize benefits you. So that's the racism I think that people are really having a hard time coming to terms with, just owning what their complicity has been. I'm trying to own, my own complicity in colorism, right? I definitely am a person of color and experience racism all the time, but I also kind of straddle the line in a way, right? Because I can walk through a white space with a lot more privilege than someone who's darker than me, or less white than me.
Or just even looking at your Filipino heritage, right? Where your skin
Right.
color, especially in the Filipino space, it's extremes. You have very, very light skinned folks and
Mm,
some who are very, very dark skinned.
yeah.
And they say, well, we're Filipino, we should have the same experience, but two separate worlds.
Yeah. There's a range. I mean, and in my family in the Philippines, I have a lot of family in the Philippines, and um, yeah, some of us are dark and some of us are light, and they have different experiences. And of course, it's also a class thing there too. But I feel like if I start talking about that, it'll be like a whole other show.
This is all for it. And, just to kind of circle back on this, on the aspect of mindfulness, right? What are some of the ways that you have started to address it? And what are some of the things that you recommend people to look within themselves?
I think it's just time to get honest with ourselves,
Yeah.
to try to pinpoint like what parts of the system each of us benefits from. And is that a privilege? Is that something that you can get that other people can't get? And why is that? I think that's the important question. And, um, you don't have to go into it with any judgment. I think it's important to just get the facts first, right? Um, and once you have the facts, I mean, we've all been like saying that Maya Angelou quote, right? Like, once you know better, do better. And it's just true. Like, try to bring that into your everyday life. And it's not enough to point at, I cannot stand some of the defense mechanisms, some of the BS that people have thrown out there, like, why don't you go after one of the real racists, right? Quotation marks, real racists, like and then I hear like, here's what I've done for people of color, and here's what I do. I'm a good person. I think Americans in general, I think, are very concerned about their personal honor, which actually sounds like a very Asian thing, but I think it's a very American thing where we get very offended if we think somebody thinks we're not a good person. It's like, no, no, no. I'm a good American. America is good. We have all these good things, good, good, good. And it's like, there are really great things about being American, but we can't ignore this history of awful things that our country has done and continues to do. You can't ignore it. We have to talk about the difficult things. So I would say, um, stop taking things so personally, right? We have to investigate the problem. Yeah, I mean, I don't have all the answers, obviously. I just wish people would take some time to be introspective. If you really do want to help, think about what you're doing that's not helping. Think about what things you could do, what is within your power that you could easily do, to help some other folks out. and not expect any kind of reward, not expect anyone to say like you're one of the good people, just do it.
Mm. Yeah. I love that part with the don't take it personally, but also when people get very agitated, right, because you're calling someone out, I always
Mm,
recommend them to reflect, okay, why is it that you're getting agitated about this, right? For
mm,
example, if I say this clock is blue, you're not going to get agitated by that, right? But it was the same thing as we've called into attention into this space something about yourself. If you're getting really worked up and agitated, let's for a second just table the you like what you put out into the world in your actions, but just what is your reflection of yourself on the topic
mm,
of racism, on the topic of equity, because by the fact that you're getting so angry about it means there's uncomfort that's happening. And uncomfort is, just to tie it back to your book, it's lighting a matchstick, right? If there weren't any matchsticks to begin with, if there wasn't gasoline to begin with, it wouldn't flame up, right? And so I think we have to do that. We really need to look inwards, like you said, and reflect on what are we taking personally, and what does that say about some of the stuff that we haven't gone through and worked through. Yeah,
mm.
yeah. Oh man, I feel like I could keep talking to you. We're like hitting a stride. We're like, let's go all night. I love this discussion, and it just opens up, the box that we don't know everything too, and the
Yeah.
sooner that we can accept that we don't know everything, the sooner that we can be more open and receptive to new ideas, new ways that we can improve, and even just like the whole equity aspect for at least same-sex partnerships, right? This is still not pervasive around the world. Even look at Asia, like 2 countries have it
Mm,
legalized, within the past
mm,
2 years, which is crazy. And so I think the fight, would you say, or just like the acceptance of it, we're so far from getting to this place where everyone is equal rights, able to be who they are, do what they want to do. And so, with that, I think for us who have the freedom, I think we need to do a lot of the work to be able to help our brothers, sisters, siblings from all around the world to not just be an example of how we need to be with each other, but also help guide them in what they need to be able to be doing to be able to help bring equity, and not just for queer people, but also for the straight people too.
yeah, it's interesting you say that just because I think as oppressed as queer people are, we also have a sort of unique privilege in kind of being forced to look at ourselves and um, really examine who we want to be and who we want to be with and what we want that to look like. Um, and I think straight people are kind of handed this roadmap and just told like, well, this is how it works. Um, and it just doesn't, I've seen a lot of straight folks really struggle with trying to uphold this tradition that they feel like they're supposed to be keeping up with. And but honestly, queer people and straight people are more similar, really, that we're just humans who just want to be with who they want to be with. And that's maybe the simple truth that I just wish could permeate books.
And with that, now that your book, your truth, is out into the world, what do you hope it does? What do you hope it brings for young readers, young queer, or even straight readers?
Yeah, I mean, I want queer youth to feel seen, to feel validated, like, okay, I get this kid gets me, and um, I just want them to know that they deserve to be in this world and to take up some space, and it's okay to want that and to fight for that. And I want straight folks to read this book and hopefully gain a little empathy and some basic understanding of some day-to-day struggles. I think it's important for educators to read this book because they definitely have students who are going through this. Yeah, I just hope that it brings more understanding and compassion into the world.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks so much for having me.
This was a great conversation, and I'm very grateful for you as a queer, but also queer Asian author, putting your story out there. And I very much empathize with a lot of your experiences because I also went through so many of that. And it's just so beautifully illustrated, so beautifully packaged, and it's a great, if you're an adult, it's a great quick read, but it's beautiful. And so really excited for that and for more people to experience it. And question, if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to follow you, where can they find you?
I'm usually on Instagram, and that's at Mike_Curato, Curato. And on Twitter, I'm at Mike Curato. And then there's also my website, MikeCurato.com.
Awesome. And before we wrap up, any last pieces of advice, last words of wisdom?
Last words of advice. This sounds so basic, but I really mean it. Like, just be yourself, whether you're out or not out. Because here's the thing that I found about trying to live my honest life, right? Just living how I truly am, which is something I'm still figuring out, is that the more I do live an honest life, the more I'm propelled towards happiness, the easier I find the people I'm supposed to be with. And that's what I wish for everybody. So, if you are acting yourself and people don't like it, well, they're not the people that need to be in your life, right? And so they are making it real easy for you because it's just time to move along and find some better people.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Really appreciate you. This was a great conversation, and hope everyone can check out your website, your social media, and your books, not just Flamer, but maybe your other books as well. It's all amazing, and always support one another, especially us queer Asian creators. And so with that, thank you so much. And for everyone listening, really appreciate you taking the time to listen to our stories, our thoughts, and with that, hope your day can be a little bit more mindful with all of this. Bye now.
Bye, thank you.